We are here at Revolutionizing News with your non-party affiliated host, me, that is Nick, and an open platform of discussion. Help us grow by smashing that thumbs up button right now. Join the movement, hit that subscribe button if you want to participate. Put your answers to the topic questions in the comments below. Now let's hear from our guests. We're going to start with Rocco on this one. The impeachment trial of former President Trump begins tomorrow. Should Donald Trump be convicted since he was impeached? And if so, what penalty should he be given since he's no longer in office, Rocco?
Well, I think that first and foremost, to be clear, we should start by saying that this is not an impeachment. John Roberts confirmed that this is not an impeachment when he refused to preside over the so-called trial. And an impeachment by constitutional standards must be presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And when he refused to do that, even if he had decided to do that, I would argue that it wasn't an impeachment anyway, but when he decided not to, that put the nail in the coffin for the notion that this was genuinely an impeachment. So even if they magically get the 12 Republican senators they need who voted that this trial is unconstitutional, Rand Paul had a bill that went 45 in favor of and 55 opposed that said that this was an unconstitutional act to impeach a former president. So to have the 67 that you need to convict, 12 Republican senators who voted that this whole trial is unconstitutional would then have to turn around and vote for conviction. So this is all a sham. We all know what the outcome would be. And even if that happened, then Trump would still be able to run in 2024 because it would all go to the Supreme Court. And there are 5 conservative justices now, in fact. And then you have John Roberts, who has made his opinion on this fairly well known. But then there's really the larger meta argument here about the Biden and Democrats' desire for unity and the degree of honesty that they're using when they claim to desire unity. The basic problem with this is that it's disingenuous, and the fake impeachment trial proves as much. If they had genuine interest in unifying America, they would be trying to move past Donald Trump, not centering a partisan charade around him. And, this is a group of people who is currently calling their opponents domestic terrorists, even as they excused or even cheered on rioting all summer when the rioters happened to be in their own political camp. And in this context, the call for unity sends a very clear message. We want peace when we're in charge, but we will bring force to you if you ever take power. And 26,000 troops in Washington, D.C., falsely labeling people as insurrectionists, threatening to expel people from Congress, all of this makes this point. Impeachment doesn't make anything better. We know the outcome, and even if we get a surprise outcome, we can be pretty sure the Supreme Court will strike down any consequences. The only thing this is going to do is ensure that neither side has any real incentive to reach out for each other, which I believe is the exact point why the Democrats are trying to tear the fabric of America apart. I truly do not understand.
David, I know that there's a lot there to unpack as well as to respond to, but we need you to respond to the question first. The audience needs your response to Donald Trump being impeached. If he is convicted, what should that penalty be? Should he be convicted? And what should the penalty be if he is convicted since he is no longer in office?
He must be convicted in order to preserve rule of law and uphold rule of law. The idea of elite impunity, this man ran on the concept of the swamp and trying to run against corruption. He is the embodiment of corruption. And to have him basically now and his supporters try to say that just because he broke the law late in his presidency, late enough so that the Senate couldn't hold the trial or wouldn't hold the trial before he got out the door, that's preposterous. What needs to happen is he needs to be convicted. And the penalties, this is, since it's never happened, would be subject to a discussion of constitutional scholars and the Supreme Court. But all of the benefits that a former president's entitled to should be stripped, and he should never be allowed to hold a federal office again. And this is not a war on unity. There can only be unity with accountability. Okay, the people that are being called terrorists are the terrorists. They murdered a police officer. All right. And yet now we have the Republicans saying, oh, gosh, let's not take this out of context. There were police officers brutalized in the attack on the Capitol. there were terrorists hunting to try and hang Vice President Pence. Right? This is not, if this is now the core of the Republican Party, if that's what Rocco's implying, that the entire Republican Party is identifying with those terrorists and traitors, then that's a discussion we should have. I don't think he's implying that. And I think actually what's going to happen is we could have unity by going ahead and examining what happened. Because Rocco's making a lot of statements. The Republican Party is making a lot of statements about what might happen with the Supreme Court, what might happen with the trial. We already know all of these things. Okay. Trials are about the process, due process. Let's go ahead and have the process. Let's put him on trial. Let's get to the bottom with all of the facts. He has been indicted. That's what the impeachment was. Let's have the trial in the Senate. Let's actually get all the facts out. Let's let the American people see what happened. And then also let the American people pass judgment on all of the members of the Senate and the House, including the unprecedented 10 members of Trump's own party who voted to impeach him, right? Let's have all of those people and all of the senators go on record and then have to run on those records later on. All right. Because this is not justice if we simply say this cannot go forward. We cannot have a trial. Then that means rule of law has died if we cannot hold people accountable.
Can I ask you a question, David?
Of course.
What does it mean to you and other Democrats if he's found innocent?
There is no finding of innocence if he's, so do you mean not convicted, I guess?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. If he's not convicted, it will have to basically be an analysis based on what comes out. Okay. Honestly, he's on a recorded call intimidating the Secretary of State of Georgia to try and alter the results of the election. That on its own is 100% impeachable and is part of what he was impeached for. Okay, these lies about the election, trying to attack the validity of Biden's win. And now people want to say Biden has an obligation to go ahead and turn the other cheek with somebody who just tried to destroy the peaceful transfer of power in this country and the legitimacy of elections. So it's entirely possible that he will not be convicted. He will not be found innocent because that's not part of the process, just like it's not part of the process of a criminal trial. People aren't found innocent in criminal trials. They're merely found not guilty. He might be not impeached, but we all know what he did. And it needs to be, the trial needs to happen for our country to be able to heal.
I and the viewers appreciate you clearing up the semantics there. Thank you. Kyle, so back to the question. Again, I know the audience wants you to respond to everybody, but let's get back to the question. Should Donald Trump be convicted since he was impeached? And if so, what should the penalty be since he's no longer in office?
Man, wow. Yeah, this is muddy waters. I think that we should, I kind of lean towards what Rand Paul was saying. Look, if this guy is no longer president, you can't impeach somebody who's not president, therefore, can't be impeached. But do I think we should hold Trump's feet to the fire for, other things? Sure, if we can. I mean, I'm not against burning Trump alive. This guy is no saint. But one thing I wanted to say to David is you in a court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty. So yes, you have to say, innocent. Trump is in it. That's how it works. Trump is innocent until he's proven to be guilty. I think that if there can be other charges brought forth to Trump for maybe inciting a riot, it's a very sticky situation, mainly because is this domestic terrorism? Probably not. Or is it, or did you incite rioters? Probably. Looks like people went to the Capitol to riot and it does ask the question, do you have a responsibility as a citizen? Let's say Trump was right, and this was a takeover of the government by the Democrats doing illegal voting fraud, and it was true. Do we have? Is it a calling to us citizens to prevent this through force, to prevent somebody from overtaking the government? That's a good question. I don't know, but something to think about.
So, do you think, Kyle? Do you think that the argument will be strong enough? Let's say the Democrat argument is strong enough. Do you think that Republican senators would do the morally right thing, depending on the argument, to not swing towards their party, but to actually convict somebody if they're proven to be guilty. Do you think that that argument is there, or do you think that people will take their oath, or do you think that they'll just vote according to the party lines?
I think most politicians ask themselves, what's in it for me? So if they think that going against their party is going to have major consequences, regardless of it's the right thing to do or wrong thing to do, that's typically what politicians do. They're kind of in it for them. It's a game to figure out, okay, if I make decision X or Y or whatever, how is that going to affect my future? So I really don't think there's not a lot of moral character in the political realm. And I'm sorry if I'm cynical, and maybe that's a sad worldview, but that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so we're going to move into our favorite part, all of our responses. We'll start with Rocco responding to Kyle and David. Your last minute. The audience wants to hear from you. What say you, Rocco?
Yeah, so I want to mostly focus on the notion that convicting Trump preserves the rule of law, or is a notion that is put forth in service of preserving the rule of law. The fact of the matter is that if he committed incitement, which is what you are alleging, incitement is a crime. You can prosecute him in a criminal court, and you can hold him to a guilty, not guilty standard based on a criminal process, not a political process, not a process decided on by elected officials who are tasked with representing their constituents, not determining a fundamental fact-based innocent or guilty claim. So in order to have a real rule of law process, if you want to charge him with something and you can, then do it. But don't have this political process which is designed to disenfranchise 74 million people from voting for the person who they want to vote for president in the 2024 election. You cannot claim to be for democracy and want to disenfranchise half of the nation. It's just simply and plainly hypocritical. You cannot claim to want unity when you want to disenfranchise half the nation. And the other point here that's important, I'll go real quick, is that if you're going to say that Donald Trump incited an insurrection by parroting misinformation about the election, well, then you have to say that Maxine Waters incited an insurrection when she said to form a crowd around congressmen and don't let them feel comfortable. And Cory Booker said to get up in people's faces. I mean, David, on this segment, you said something that is seeming in very recent news to turn out to be false. The notion that people at the Capitol murdered a police officer, Brian Sicknick. It turns out that is at the very least highly questionable. A CNN article titled "Investigators Struggled to Build Murder Case and Death of U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick," dated February 2nd, 2021. Down in the 8th paragraph of the article says, according to one law enforcement official, medical examiners did not find signs that the officer sustained any blunt force trauma. So investigators believe that early reports that he was fatally struck by a fire extinguisher are not true. So by that standard, if this is incitement, then if somebody commits an act of violence on the basis of the notion that Brian Sicknick was murdered by a fire extinguisher, then we could arrest CNN for inciting that. But of course, we wouldn't do that because that's not incitement, because in America we have freedom of speech, and it is the conservative position, the libertarian position, the American position, quite frankly, to defend freedom of speech and to defend people's right to express perfectly valid opinions. 70% or so of Republicans agree with Donald Trump that the election was stolen, and they have the right to that opinion. Holding that opinion does not constitute criminal incitement.
Okay, David, how do you respond to Rocco and Kyle?
This is a difficult situation because it gets to the heart of so many problems we have in this country. But the biggest one that it gets to is that we have a two-party system where one party has decided they don't want it to be a democratic system with free and fair elections. So this isn't a situation where free speech applies. I don't have to treat the Republicans as if they're all operating in good faith, because if they are operating in a way to try and subvert free and fair elections to try and destroy democracy in this country, then any of us who think that democracy is absolutely core to the American experience and core to what America should be need to see this as fundamentally treasonous to that idea, right? Whether or not it's treasonous to the country, those are legal technicalities. Right, but do not tell me that people who are trying to perpetrate a coup by putting out now, because Rocco's tried to conflate two ideas. One, a situation where we don't know, I guess, exactly what happened. I haven't seen what he's bringing up about Skolnick. But saying that then making statements about that because we don't know what has happened, that could potentially be incitement. No, we knew what happened in the election. There was absolutely no question whatsoever. It is 100% factual. Trump got his ass kicked in that election. He lost. And it's 100% factual that he lied about the result. It's 100% factual that he called the Secretary of State in Georgia. And who knows what else he did in other places. And Lindsey Graham did in Georgia as well, but they just didn't record that call. But we hear on the call himself that he's perpetrating lies and trying to get them to overturn the election results. This is grotesque. And the idea that we're not going to use every single remedy at our disposal to make sure he never holds office again, that would include impeaching him and criminal prosecution, right? This isn't one or the other. Everything in the world should be thrown at him right now because he's the biggest threat that democracy in this country has ever faced. And if his supporters don't see that, well, I'm not obligated to go ahead and concede that people who are trying to destroy democracy have the right to the same opinion and weight of that opinion in a democracy.
Kyle, our last 60 seconds. How do you respond to Rocco and David?
Being a non-Trump guy, I hear David. I don't totally, but I get wanting to string Trump up and impeach him and prosecute him and seeing it if anything comes to light. I wouldn't be opposed to that. But Rocco has a good point. That is this is this going to help? Is this going to do anything? Is this going to benefit? Are we just grinding gears? It's a waste of time. I don't know, but I would think if I was a Democrat, I would think this thoroughly through and make sure like there's going to be a consequence for the Democrats that's positive or some benefit for them. Otherwise, I think that they can end up doing damage to their platform unintentionally.
How is that?
Well, just like Rocco said, I mean, you have somebody calling for unity. And maybe this isn't the best way to unite anybody. So,
okay. Well, we appreciate our guests coming on today. We appreciate you, the viewer. If you liked us, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.